Welcome to Food for Thought. I'm Chef Tom Lombardi. This is my co-host, Psilly Willy.
What's up?
Our special guest, Dr. Don Dumore Mates. Tonight we're going to be serving up a tasty array that's pleasing for the palate, but not for the palate of the stomach, but for the palate of the mind. Something to think about, and I hope we're going to give you lots to think about on this show.
Indeed. Tweak your worldview, indeed.
And so without further ado, we're going to pose the question, who is this man? What influences has he had on this country, let alone what influences has he had on the world?
Yeah, indeed.
He was born in October 12th, 1875.
Long time ago.
And he died in December 1st or December 5th. You will find conflicting information regarding the exact date of his death in 1947.
That's when all the UFOs started showing up.
He was also labeled the wickedest man in the world. Does that give you any clue as to who we could be referring to?
Who could it be now?
And although many did declare him to be a Satanist and Satan worshiper.
Let's just talk about his family a little bit. Aleister, this guy, his father was a brewer. And back in the day, he made a lot of money for his family. So he comes from a wealthy family. And at the age of 14, his father passed away. Or I should say at the age of 11, his father passed away. And by the age of 14, he was a very confused boy because after his father was done brewing, his father became a Christian, and he was known to be part of a very, very strict sect, a Protestant sect called the Plymouthonian Brethren. And his father was a traveling evangelist, and Aleister, this guy who we're not supposed to be talking about, I say, he basically worshipped his father, you know. And at this particular point in junction of his life, he basically said that anyone who didn't follow Jesus Christ was a fool. But as his father passed on, and by the age of 14, he had another stepfather, and his mom was basically a tyrant, and this sect was so strict, there was basically no room for fun. So he was wound up with rebellion from a very young age, to say the least. So, as time goes on, what happens? Any clue? Any ideas?
Well, he devoted his life to doing just as he pleased, pretty much.
Well, he wanted to bring about a new freedom philosophy. And there was so much hypocrisy in Christianity that, be honest with you, look at Christianity, and he basically assessed Christianity, and his self-assessment of Christianity was his own curse. And, he was well educated, went to Cambridge as a boy, but because he was so oppressed by his mother, he got involved with a lot of sexual activity as a youth, and at the age of 14, just to get his mother tweaked, he made advances on the maid that was living with them. And he was sent away to school at Trinity, I believe, and as he went on to, Trinity, Cambridge, and then went on to Oxford, and he studied chemistry. And by the time he got there,
he was writing his own poetry, publishing it under a pseudonym.
And that's maybe something we should talk about. I mean, this guy here, he has very prolific tendencies in the sense that he mastered chess at a young age, and while he was going to university, he got involved with mountain climbing and mountaineering, and he holds records for mountain climbing. And see, these are some of the things. People have no clue how much impact this gentleman really has on our world. Well, anyway, while he was at Cambridge, he started to get a very acute interest in the occult. And after several years at Cambridge, at the age of 21, because he had a wealthy family, he received quite a bit of money that he didn't have to worry about money for a good part of his life. So he decided to leave the university and pursue the black arts. And he got involved with a particular order called the Order of the Golden Dawn. The Order of the Golden Dawn is a sect of Freemasonry. So, let me look at my recipe for success here, also known as my notes. Let's see.
Yeah, he joined that when he was about 23, and after 2 years, he was kicked out.
Well, he wasn't kicked out. He started at the lowest echelons of that society, and he had an ability to study and to harvest what was the meat, the source of this occult practice. And he accelerated to the highest levels, and he really thought that some of the people that were practicing magic within this sect were charlatans, meaning that they really weren't pushing the limit to what he thought he might like to do. So his first experience in this sect was, mediocre, I guess you might say, and this kind of drove him.
Or unfulfilling, is what it was.
Exactly.
Something like that. You're always seeking fulfillment,
right.
Power.
And he decided to get involved with something known as the Abramilian ritual, which is a ritual from the 14th century. And he needed a special place to conduct this ritual. This ritual takes about 6 months to conduct. So he basically became a monk of sorts, practicing the black arts. And he moved to a hamlet. I always pronounce this wrong. Boleskine is the way it's pronounced. And it's his property that he searched out for this property for a year. And he found this property, and it's on the front of Loch Ness. And we all know what Loch Ness is. So keep that in mind as we talk about who this gentleman is. All right? And it's funny that Boleskine house, which became known as where he resided for 14 years, the Boleskine comes from a word that's derived from the Babylonian god Baal, which is quite interesting because all these little quirks, these coincidences, whatever you want to call them, they all tie together into what this man evolved into spiritually.
Well, wasn't his philosophy, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law?
Well, that comes out further in something that, so you got to understand what this guy was trying to do while he was pursuing the black arts. He was trying to find a holy guardian for himself that could take him to the limits to bring out a new philosophy of freedom, which we saw basically come out in the 60s. I mean, anybody who knows anything about the 60s and went out there with free love and drugs, that's all can be attributed to this very man right here. And while we're talking about that, we could talk about some of the influences. All right, while we're talking about the Boleskine house, anybody who's familiar with the band Led Zeppelin should know that between 1971 and 1991, Jimmy Page, the lead guitarist, who is very much involved with the occult, anybody who knows anything about the song Stairway to Heaven and what that really means, all right, all of your great musicians from the 70s and 60s really, derived their muse from who we're talking about here. Now,
well, Robert Plant's...
Let's put another picture here for the folks to check out. All right. Now, this is when he was in the Order of the Golden Dawn, perhaps, or this is representation of Horus. Is that what you're talking about?
The symbol on top, the eye, is the Egyptian symbol for the Egyptian god of Horus, which equates to many societies as the devil.
Right. He's the god of force and fire, Horus.
For the all-seeing eye, you'll notice, right. I've actually seen an advertisement of that symbol on Starbucks coffee.
Right. So we're getting off a little base here, but
the influences in our society, you will find the symbolism that has definitely been promoted by this gentleman throughout our society.
Right.
Symbols in places where you would least expect to see them.
Right.
America Online is very similar to that triangle with the eye, the CBS symbol.
Can't deny it.
There's a few others, I cannot think of them off the top of my head, but one is enough, really, when you have a symbol that relates back to history to a demonic figure, really, is what it boils down to. All-seeing, all-knowing.
Let's talk about a few more musicians that he's impacted, because when I was 20, I did about a 5-month cross-country trip, and I was pursuing to be a lyricist myself. And while traveling across the country, I was sharing with people, hey, check out my lyrics. What do you think? And they kept giving me feedback. And after so long, I kept hearing the same feedback. And, first it stroked my ego. Oh, it's great. And, thanks for your comments, because basically they were saying, oh, I could see the influence, and the influence I was given was,